Thank you very much. I always thought that the difference between proof and belief was that the mother can prove that the child is hers and the father believes that the child is his. But maybe that's applicable here, maybe not. Number one. Number two, I'm sorry for the time. I was told actually I had to limit my comments to 4.5 hours, so for the first 45 minutes I thought I'd go over a little slideshow, which if I could go to the next slide, please. I want to give a little bit of, in the brief time that I have, of an explanation of what we actually did at the Empire State Building and what we're doing at the Empire State Building, so that it can help inform my conclusions or thoughts going forward. My topic is quantitative arguments for energy efficiency retrofits, lessons learned from the Empire State Building. And what I am seeking to do is to bring everything down to numbers. That's my objective, to make it as clear as possible that this is not about quantitative, this is about qualitative. It's not about qualitative, it's early in the morning for me. This is about quantitative, and it's about change that's measurable. That's where we can really have an impact. So I hope you've had an opportunity to take a look at this. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. When my grandfather, father, and Harry Holmes had bought the Empire State Building in 1963, we had a bit of a battle as my grandfather passed away, and Harry Holmesley was not really competent to run things, and his wife now, or then widow, then dead ex-wife. Everyone got to know her, I think, through the public reports of her activities. Long story short, after a lengthy litigation, we got control of the Empire State Building in August of 2006, and we had a couple of priorities in order to reposition this asset. The first thing that we thought of doing was to make it green. I subsequently became convinced that green is not what I wanted to do. I don't want to knock anybody who believes in being green, but in my view, at least in the United States, green has become disassociated from quantitative results. Green is a qualitative thing that people want to achieve, but it's not really easily measured. So what ended up happening was we assembled a team through the Clinton Climate Initiative of Johnson Controls, Jones Lang LaSalle, and the Rocky Mountain Institute. And we set out either to prove or disprove that there was an economic argument behind energy efficiency retrofits in the existing built environment. This is really important to me in context of the Empire State Building, because I needed to reposition the world's most famous office building, an icon on the skylines of New York and around the world, well known. Anybody from anywhere could send a postcard to me from to the Empire State Building, merely put my name and Empire State Building with a stamp on it, nothing else, and it would be delivered. I've done it from the Maldives, I've done it from Morocco, I've done it from Kenya. It works. But we had a bunch of really crappy little tenants in the building, 750 plus suites over the decades, really. Not something of which to be proud, and we needed to revitalize the building. So wanted to use the work to publicize and differentiate our building to attract tenants, and a replicable model. That's critical. Why? Because we have to work on the existing built environment. Building new and efficiently is attractive. It has its shortfalls, which I'll go into. But the fact of the matter is that really, depending upon your measurement and your own estimates, 85 to 95% of all buildings in developed world countries with their major cities that are going to be in place in 2035 are here already. So if you want to dial back energy consumption, you have to build on the existing built environment. And of course, the bottom line, number 5, the only place we succeed is the Empire State Building. We fail. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So here's my argument, green versus energy efficiency retrofits. This is the suite of what I call green building practices. And there's absolutely no reason not to incorporate those into how you run your buildings. Period. Full stop. There really, at this point, is virtually no additive cost. Maybe a slight additional cost in some areas with regard to making sure that your tenant waste and construction debris on tenant refit is recycled. But the bottom line is even that's changing. as there's more reclamation of those recycled items and the markets improve. In 2007, we actually were paid for our refuse, and we go into an economic downturn, it costs us less, but net, there's no reason not to do all of these things. So I don't really look at these green building practices, however, as what the major nut is. The major nut are these energy efficiency issues here. We need to work at reducing loads, reducing energy uses, optimize systems efficiency, all the items which are noted up there, but do it within the framework that is measurable, verifiable, and can demonstrate a return on investment. That's really the objective here that needs to be fulfilled, needs to be achieved. Next slide, please. There are a lot of industry drivers working towards this. Of course, in the UK and in Europe, there's been a heavy focus on carbon, and energy is a derivative of carbon. I think, actually, that what may happen in Europe, particularly with the economic downturn in the UK, is what I feel is the argument that we have to make it in the United States, is that carbon is a derivative of energy. And I think about this because that is one of the best ways, I think, in which to look at energy efficiency. Number one, and number two, carbon, whether you measure it by cubic meters or by tons or whatever you choose to do, carbon is what? You know, is it how much carbon is in this piece of paper? How much carbon is went into making this little flexible stand for this microphone? Everybody understands dollars and cents, and right now it's really the value proposition of carbon which is hard to define, whereas the value of a watt or BTU is much easier to define. When we're competing for dollars, I'll get into that in my comments which follow the slideshow. I think it makes a difference. So the converging forces, we need to be more sustainable, energy supply constraints, all of these different federal, state, and local, obviously that's an Americanization of what you deal with. The corporate trend towards GRI or CSR, or however you want to refer to it locally. And the fact is that there are pressures. People want to participate in this. And I got to agree with Robert. The environment's not some place where we go to visit, admire, think about preserving, then come home. The environment's where we live and work. And that's on what we have to work. That's with what we have to work. That's where we need to make our impacts, because we don't live with polar bears. We live with each other. And I love the folks who go to check out the Arctic and then come home and don't alter how they live their lives. Business opportunity. This is really happening. In the United States, there's a practice now amongst the appraisal industry participants to begin to look at the latent, uncalculated, off-balance sheet exposure to energy efficiency and wasteful practices. When you think about this, that's what the UK is trying to accomplish with the grading systems on buildings, though it's presently without teeth. Same thing in Europe, European Union, I guess, initiative there. But the concept that it's not just you get an A or B, a C, a D, or a E, and a G, whatever you like, but also that the costs of making your properties more energy efficient needs to be factored in. That'll hit how much you can borrow, that'll hit how much you can sell for, that'll hit how much you can rent for. That's coming. Operating costs, the three highest costs of occupancy are salary, rent, and utilities. And the one that you can control the least is utilities. You can fire people, you can move, you can sublet space, but when it really comes down to it, it's the market that dictates your energy price. The marketability and competitiveness, everyone's made a big thing successfully, I think, about, quote, green, unquote. Well, translating green into dollars and cents or pounds and pence, I think it's going to make a big difference. People want a better green environment, a sustainable environment, a cleaner environment in which they work. But we actually now have tenants like Skanska who are monitoring the productivity and sick days and health in their office.